But on to our next topic. A little more exciting news. Indiana Jones 5. Indiana Jones 5. I really want to get into this topic. There was some casting news. But before we get into the casting news, I want to get, Vashka, I want to get your opinion on just your overall feelings on even making it Indy 5. What are your thoughts on this whole sequel situation?
Well, listen, my thoughts on Indiana Jones in general are... We're good stuff right there, man. We're good stuff. We're going in, baby. We're going to do it right this time.
Yes.
I can't wear the headphones at the same time, guys. I'm sorry. Okay. That's E-Rock for you, by the way. He does an amazing cover.
We can tell that Dre is not excited about it at all.
No, look, listen. I'm excited in this way. There's a chance here to do justice to the character finally. I think a lot of us had some issues with number 4. I think even Harrison Ford had issues with number 4. Yeah. And
there was a number 4? You sure there was a number 4?
I know we don't speak of number. I mean, we just refer to it by number and not by name because it's very traumatic as an Indiana Jones fan. But look, listen. You have a chance here to really right some wrongs here. And I think that's why Harrison Ford himself was willing to do it. From what I understand, when J.J. Abrams came up to him and said, hey, look, we're going to be doing what you wanted to do with the ending of Empire Strikes Back, as in kill off the character of Han Solo, finally, and, kind of bring those ideas to life, especially with his notion of the character and so forth. And so... he did agree on those terms. One of the things that he did say, though, from what I understand, was we have to make an Indiana Jones 5. I'm going to do this. Promise me that we make this movie. And that's why this has gone the way it has so far. At least that's from what I understand. So I think for him, too, it was like I didn't leave the character in a good place. It is a character, from what I understand, that he has a lot of personal... he kind of views that as kind of his franchise, his character, his kind of thing, so he himself is a fan of it. And I think he does want to do justice to the character. So yeah, am I excited on that point? Yes, but I have other issues with it that really, really frighten me. And I'll turn it over to you guys. What do you think?
Well, my main concern, sorry, Orange Crab.
No, go ahead. No, I was actually just going to turn it over to you. So go ahead.
My number one concern with it all is for how long it is taking for the production to actually start on this is for Indy to trade in his whip for a walker. It's like, how much is it going to be to where Harrison himself can have enough screen time to do all these things that he's so used to doing from the 80s? Right. And it's like, is it going to be where it's a storyline where Indy is sort of passing the hat, so to speak? Is it going to be solely on him? Because this is a story that was supposed to be, the film was supposed to be done retrospectively from the time when it was announced, and it just kept on getting delayed and delayed, but they're still moving forward. So, I mean, they must have something in mind where, despite Harrison being of age, that it can still be done. And without Harrison, there is no Indy 5. So I would suggest to the company to start getting stuff rolling pretty quickly.
Well, from what I understand, the release date is July of 2022. So they're shooting for that. I don't know if it'll actually be that. We'll see. But the good news about this movie is the director, in my opinion, is James Mangold, who directed Logan and Ford vs. Ferrari, both movies which I absolutely loved. Actually, I liked Ford vs. Ferrari even more than Logan. But James Mangold has some directing chops. He is very, very good at what he does. So I'm hoping he can churn out a really, really good Indiana Jones movie. The problem with Indiana Jones, like you touched upon, George, is Harrison is like 80 years old. so you really, I mean, it's good to have him back, but is he going to be the same? It's just hard. Like, he's 80 years old now,
But here's the thing. I caught him at the when he did his segment at the Oscars, when he did a very funny knock to the Blade Runner. You know, it was very funny, but very well done. But if you actually saw him, and nothing knocking Harrison Ford, because I mean, as you get older, you know, but I'm watching him and the way he's talking and the way he's standing, it's like, can he really do what he did almost like 40 years ago? And it's like, it's concerning me as each day that goes by of how long production is going to be. What is it going to take to say how much of the script is going to have to change in order to accommodate his needs?
I think the best approach for this movie in general is you can't have Indiana Jones this old and pretend like he's the Indiana Jones from the Temple of Doom. Yeah. The character has to acknowledge he's too old for this shit, basically, you know, and kind of go with that route, that approach where you acknowledge, hey, I'm too old for this. You know, my back ain't the same. If you try to cover it up and try to pretend he's the same Indiana Jones that he was in the 80s, it's not going to feel right. You know, he's got to acknowledge it, in my opinion. Another thing too, I want to ask Vash this. What would you think? Because obviously Indy 5 is going to have Harrison Ford. Yeah. What would you think about them rebooting? Because Indiana Jones is a big franchise, a huge franchise, and obviously Harrison can't do this forever. Would you be open to a reboot or passing of the hat, as George was saying, for future Indy movies? Or what are your thoughts on that?
There were.
Oh, great! You have the hat, so
I do have the hat.
There you go.
Not quite the hat, but I don't know. I kind of want to have Harrison keep that hat, because it's just. Listen, the thing about it is there were notions of Indiana Jones becoming, I mean, like its inspiration, James Bond, in that you could have a new Indiana Jones actor play that character in multiple iterations going forward, right? There was an idea of that. I don't know.
Weird.
Because it's so tied to Harrison, and that's the problem. You know, that's why they had a three-way split on Control from Harrison Ford, George Lucas, and Steven Spielberg, because it was just so tied to that actor, tied to that character. I've gone back and forth with it, and I can't see it. I just can't see where it goes beyond Harrison Ford, the through line.
Because wasn't there talks that it was supposed to be Chris Pratt playing a young Indy?
Yeah. I mean, there were concepts for things like that. There were concepts for a wide range of actors to have the fedora be transferred to, and I don't know. It is one of those things. It's like, yes, it is a big franchise. Yes, it is extremely successful. Yes, can you do things with it? Sure. How far do those things go though without Harrison Ford? I think it's a big question mark, and I think there's going to be a range of fans that just don't accept it.
Yeah, and I think that's a big part of why Solo, a Star Wars story, didn't do well, is because they tried to. You know, they recast and look, no disrespect to Alden. I think Alden did the very best that he could. Mm-hmm. But he just didn't get the same reception as like Ewan McGregor did for Obi-Wan or Donald Glover did for Lando. I mean, he just wasn't, a lot of fans just really weren't buying it. And again, it's not because he's not a great actor. He is. It's just that Harrison Ford, his shoes it's hard to fill those shoes. And I think any actor that tries to replace Harrison in this role is going to have a real problem.
Well, you know, it's interesting because you brought up before in our previous segment where, you know, Solo being on Disney Plus might have worked, right? As a series, you could make an argument. You know, you did have the Young Indiana Jones series that had a modicum of success. I think looked back on now, it's looked on more fondly than when it premiered. You could make an argument for an Alden Ehrenreich figure to take the fedora and play it out as kind of a younger Indiana Jones before the films actually take place through a series platform. That would be something that I would be very much interested in. And you know, for Alden Ehrenreich, you know, it's interesting. if I don't know if you got to YouTube and you saw like these kind of face replacements that they do sometimes. And there is one for Solo in various scenes that Alden Ehrenreich plays, and he actually gets the mannerisms pretty good. He doesn't look like Harrison, obviously, but he does get a lot of the affect and a lot of the things very, very well, to the point where when that face replacement does actually take place, it's actually pretty convincing.
Wow.
It's quite stunning. So look, I can kind of see it that way, but as far as a film franchise, I just can't see it, guys.
Yeah.
If you're going to do a number 5, it has to be Harrison or nothing for me.
And that's just it. That's just it. It's the only way you're going to get them in the theaters. And I know Phoebe. What is it? Phoebe
Waller-Bridge.
Phoebe Waller-Bridge. I keep forgetting her name. I do apologize. I know she was brought in. She was also brought into the latest James Bond iteration, the 25th Bond, and she was brought in for her screenwriting purposes. And I know there were some controversial changes there. People were suggesting that there might be controversial changes here as well. Interesting, James Bond, Indiana Jones intersecting again. I don't know if that's accurate. I think she is just brought in as an actress. John Williams is coming back though, so that's awesome. We thought we heard the last of him in Rise of Skywalker, so that's great.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up Phoebe Waller-Bridge. She was cast in this, as well as Mads Mikkelsen. So they're dipping into that Star Wars talent pool. I mean, these are, Mads Mikkelsen was in Rogue One, and Phoebe Waller-Bridge was the droid in Solo. So that's interesting. Now, I didn't love the droid that she played in Solo. I liked the concept of the droid fighting for droid rights. I loved that concept. I just felt that they kind of beat you over the head a little bit too much with it, instead of just kind of showing you that that's what she was doing. It was more spoken. I don't know. It just felt a little too repetitive, but that's not Phoebe's fault. I mean, that's the script and everything like that. I'm not familiar with a lot of her other work. And then Mads Mikkelsen, he's going to be in this movie, which I loved him in Rogue One.
Yeah, that's cool. That's a cool villain. That's awesome. I think that's great.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you think, so this would take place like the 60s, 70s? Is that kind of what we would, approach this thing from?
I think so, because I think that Last Crusade, if I'm not mistaken, was like the late 30s. I think that the Crystal Skull, if I'm not mistaken, was like the late 50s-ish, right? Wasn't it around there or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought so. I thought it was just kind of like 50s, 60s, kind of just approaching that territory. Yeah, so
if we take that trajectory, I guess we can assume like the fifth one would probably be, like you said, 60s or 70s.
I think so. And then, so would the threat, because I know you had the German people from the 1940s be the threat in the first, two of the first three. Do you think the threat would be the Soviet Union still, or what? How do we think that's going to go there?
That's a tough one. Yeah, probably communism, because that's it. Kind of ties in with the whole that's why we're in Vietnam. I think communism will probably be the big thread for that. I'm assuming.
It's going to be interesting to see how they either approach those issues or bypass them completely.
Hey, Indy fighting for Medicare.
There you go.
Well, that's a pretty contemporary message. That's probably going to be Flintstones, actually. But no, I don't. It's going to be very interesting to see, kind of what they do here. There are areas you can go for sure. It's just, from what I understand, that's kind of why Steven Spielberg left, was just he wasn't completely adamant on the story and the changes that they wanted to make and so forth. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm really torn on this because I want so much. I love Indiana Jones as a character, as an IP. I want to see so much Indiana Jones stuff because I just love that world and that whole archaeology thing, and I just love it. I want to see more of it, but then it's like I don't know if I want to see more of it without Harrison, though.
That's the thing.
That's where the obstacle is, because since he is the front runner to this film, I mean, it's titled Indiana Jones, that it can't be his screen time that he was as Han Solo in The Force Awakens.
Right.
Where he had bits and pieces here or there. I mean, he has to carry this film.
Yeah, and do it at the age that he is, as we all kind of say. Now, look, he's kept his body up specifically for this role, to don the fedora once again. But man, how much gusto does he actually have? How long is the production actually going to be? How physically demanding is the production going to be going forward? You know, are they going to have to comp in some other actors to play him in certain scenes and stuff? I mean, these are all very, very legitimate questions. It's interesting. There was I lost my train of thought. Hang on. Wait. Yeah. I mean, we're all attracted to the world of Indiana Jones. Like
Right.
the attraction itself is just, it's phenomenal. It's great. It all kind of speaks to the adventure in all of us. And so it's a franchise that people have a very much an emotional attachment to. And, you know, with this kind of era of Lucasfilm that we have here, you know, are people going to be a little bit more apprehensive about it, just looking at, you know, how they, you know, other characters have been treated so thus far? It's very interesting. It's a very, very tricky situation for them.
Yeah, it is. I'm very curious how this turns out. I'm cautiously optimistic just because James Mangold's involved, and I do typically like his work. And I'm hearing that I think Steven Spielberg is like an executive producer, but he's very much involved in this. Even though he's not technically the director, but I do hear he is working with them quite a bit. Yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic, but I'm still worried though. I am worried, especially after that last one.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, but to be fair, that wasn't Disney though. That was, I think, in 2009. So I don't know. We'll see.
From what I understand, George Lucas kind of pressured the trio to kind of go along, you know, with him on this. And I don't think Steven Spielberg or Harrison Ford were really all that like. It was kind of one of those things. If it's not going to happen now, when is it? It might as well happen with this script, with this story. And it just wasn't there. And I think they all kind of agreed that it wasn't quite up to the indie standards, so to speak. And that's why I think Harrison Ford wants to go ahead and go through with this and kind of redeem the character in his own way. But I don't know, man. It's just you have a lot of things happening all at once, and that's going to leak into the film. We'll see. Yeah,
we'll see. And then real quick before we go, I'm going to ask both of you guys. I'll start with you, Disney Family Man. Would you prefer a series, an Indiana Jones series, like on Disney Plus, like maybe even like a mini series, like a 5 or 6 episode series to continue that Indiana Jones story, or do you like the Indiana Jones movie approach better? What would you prefer if you were in charge?
I think with having Harrison Ford involved, that I would prefer it to be Indiana Jones 5 as a film to kind of wrap everything up as a film series. If they were to take the approach of having a young Indy and have someone like fill in the gaps of where Harrison wasn't, like before Raiders of the Lost Ark, that I would love to see a spin-off series on Disney Plus.
Okay. And Bash Sky, what are your feelings on that? Would you rather have a Disney Plus show, like a mini series, like what they're doing with like Kenobi, or are you happy with just the film? If they're going to do it, what would you prefer?
Yeah, I mean, if there is a life for Indy outside of beyond Harrison Ford, and it's interesting, that was the other thing I was going to bring up, was they circled the tires on doing a kind of a take on Iron Man without Robert Downey Jr. and it just never worked. So it's just some of these characters are just tied to these franchises in kind of inextricable ways, and you can't separate those. So I think for film, I think I'm with George. It's like, hey, look, if you're going to do a film, it's got to be Harrison Ford. If you're going to do a television series, and it maybe they take place either before the films or after the films or whatever, then there are some areas you can go in terms of actors and characterization and storyline and so forth. I think that's a really attractive thing. And I am open to that idea, and it could be great too. You could get the rights for the Young Indiana Jones series, put them on Disney Plus to provide more content that way to get people excited for the kind of would it be like the adult-ish Indiana Jones or something like that, Yeah. So I think there's a way you can go.
Yeah, absolutely. An Indiana Jones show would be pretty cool. Each episode you kind of focus on various adventures. And I think it could be very, very cool on Disney Plus if you do like in a mini series kind of approach, like a young indie. I would be down for that if they want to extend this franchise out a little bit and do something like that. I don't know. Like I said, I liked Alden and Solo, but I wasn't convinced he just wasn't all the way there. I think I'd probably pick somebody else for that.
I think so. Isn't that kind of an indictment on Solo though?
It is. That's the thing too.
See, that's the thing
on that, for sure. Because you're kind of admitting like, oh, we made a mistake.
Right. If you trusted him for Solo, then why aren't you trusting him to play Indiana Jones? It's very interesting.
It's interesting because this is a guy, Harrison, who played both characters. And yeah, you're right. Absolutely, Vash. If you do a different actor, it's sort of like admitting like, hey, you know what? We got the wrong guy the last time.
Maybe.
Tough call. Unless they
go ahead.
Unless they reboot and they do like a female Indiana Jones or something. I don't know.
You see, that's the thing. That's what people are kind of worried about here. And I have to agree. Female Indiana Jones kind of seems weird. Isn't that just like Tomb Raider, essentially?
I was going to say that. It's really Tomb Raider.
Okay. So even then it's like, it just feels weird. You could do, I mean, here's an option. What if you did like an Indiana Jones series, but from Mutt's perspective, and you recast that character and do something like that on Disney Plus? That could be something. Kind of a series where he's kind of kind of discovering his father's exploits throughout time.
That's interesting. That kind of reminds me of like how they approached the DC series Gotham, where they took the franchise of Batman, but it was seen through another character, seen through Commissioner Gordon, a young Commissioner Gordon's perspective. That's interesting, Vash. That's very interesting.
You could do stuff. I mean, it's possible.